Welcome to this Hamina webinar, everybody. This is Modern Wi-Fi in Education, the playbook for avoiding Wi-Fi detention. Here from Hamina today is Jerry. I'll let you say hi, Jerry. Go ahead.
I can make sure I'm unmuted here. Yep.
Oh, you are unmuted. You're good. Yeah, we got you.
Awesome.
Loud and clear.
Hey, everybody.
Jerry's our guy in the US. He's basically my counterpart over there and does a bunch of stuff. And also with us is Jussi Kiviniemi, the founder and CEO and janitor of Hamina. You want to say hi, Jussi?
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining. Thank you, the online audience, as well as thank you, our live audience back there. Thank you so much, Joel, for joining. And thank you, Joel, for having me. And don't forget our special guest star, Roger Harris, as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Roger, you want to say hi?
Hello. Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for the impromptu invitation.
Yeah, sure thing. Roger was he was just in the list of attendees, and I was like, promote to panelist, and ta-da, you're on camera. So sorry about that. I did not give you any warning.
All right.
Awesome. Also with us, we have Rowell. Rowell, let you introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. Looking forward to talking about higher ed Wi-Fi, and we'll see what happens.
And Rowell, you spend quite a bit of time behind that microphone, right? You do some microphone work. Yeah. So for anybody that doesn't know, Rowell has a podcast, the Clear to Send podcast, which I cannot recommend enough. It is excellent. I've used it for studying for exams and keeping up with what's going on in the industry and all kinds of stuff. Jussi's mobile right now, apparently. Oh, and you're getting a look at the whole studio
behind the
here.
Scenes.
Hey, yeah, the behind the scenes. So stereoscopic, Joel. I don't know if that's a good thing, but yeah, thanks for being here, Rowell. Really appreciate it. Mitch, you want to introduce yourself? Say hi.
Yeah, I'm Mitch Dickey, and I work for Loudoun County Public Schools in Northern Virginia, just right down the road from where Roger is right now. And that kind of looks like me. I really like what you guys have done with my hair, my wife was very impressed. So just
nice.
So you know, yes, thank you. But yeah, looking forward to it. Should be pretty cool. We do some non-traditional Wi-Fi type stuff here in Loudoun County in the schools, and like the warehouse that I'm in right now that I put Wi-Fi in not too long ago. So yeah,
nice.
Be excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, guys. Really do appreciate it. And people might say that these are fake. They're not. These are real images of. You can clearly see, like, this is the last time that Rowell had a big speaking engagement at the college or whatever. And same with Mitch. I mean, look at all those people that were there, and same with Bryan as well. So, and man, Bryan, that guy can dress sharp. He looks good. So, and Bryan will be joining us. What's that?
The suspenders really pop for Bryan.
Oh man, why it makes me wonder why I've never tried suspenders before. That looks really good. So, but yeah, thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate it. So, real quick, just to kind of look at the agenda, so everybody knows what to expect. First off, we'll start off with a little development update, kind of what we've been doing at Hamina, what's new. We typically get like a lot of questions about when things are coming. So I thought, let's just talk about it up front really quick. So we'll try to keep it from being too long or too much of an advertisement. Mitch is going to talk about 1 AP per classroom a little bit, and anything else he cares to talk about. Like, Mitch, just go for it and have fun. And Bryan's got some stuff to talk about as well, specifically why it's important to make friends with the campus architect and how that can be really helpful. And Rowell, of course, will pop in with any comments or anything like that along the way. And then later in the webinar, the three professors here are going to grade Jussi and Jerry and I's work, and that's terrifying. I have a feeling that we're going to fail. It's just going to be a great big fail. So and then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. But speaking of Q&A, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A tool. Just throw those in there, and we'll be happy to tackle those. We'll just kind of work on them as we go. I think some questions makes for a really good webinar, so please put your stuff in there. And also, you may have noticed that the chat is blowing up. Please continue to blow up the chat. That's great. If you put questions in there, we might miss those, so maybe stick those in the QA tool. Might not be a bad idea. but we do love seeing conversation in there, and we'll pop in there from time to time too. So yeah, so with that, let's do a kind of a quick update and talk about what's new at Hamina, some recent things that we've done. First thing that we've done that I think is pretty cool is the 3D view. I'll show you that in a second. We also implemented sloped floors, like raised and sloped floors. I'll show you that as well. And the most recent thing that we did was mesh mode. So Jussi had this cool idea to put the ability to do mesh backhaul in there. So I'll show you what that looks like. And before I show you kind of what's new in there really quick, a lot of people have questions. They ask, when is site survey coming? When are we going to get site survey with Hamina? And so I just want to address this up front and let you know we're working on it. It's coming very, very soon. We're expecting to release our site survey product, which will be both an app and also dedicated measurement hardware this fall. We're planning on making a formal release date announcement at WLPC in Prague in just a few weeks. So keep an eye out for those announcements. Real quick on the kind of the what's new in Hamina, just figure I'd show real quick, is we have implemented a 3D view. So basically you can look at everything in 3D, really kind of making that jump from 2D to 3D isn't as big of a deal. It's not as big of a deal as you'd think from like a programmatic perspective, because we have, and I should be careful not to say that around the developers. They would be like, what do you mean that's not a big deal? It was a huge deal to build that in there. But when we have a floor plan and we know the heights of the walls, we know the heights of the APs, we have all the data that we need in there to show how tall everything is. And so the big thing that I like to use the 3D view for is just validating that all my geometry is correct, making sure that the warehouse racks are the right heights and all that stuff. In addition to the 3D view, we also implemented sloped and raised floors. So the way that I drew this particular map is this is a 2D image. This is just a snapshot from Google Maps. And then I went through and drew in raised floors. So these dark areas are just areas where the floor is raised, and then also sloped floors. So basically you define a lower edge and an upper edge, and then we can draw a slope on that. And you can even do stuff like draw in crowds on top of that. And the final result from that is you get a full 3D model from that. And even more recently, we did attenuating objects and walls with a lower height and an upper height, which is how I get the Minecraft trees here. And of course, like it all propagates in 3D properly. Everything works like it should, but pretty great. Last thing I'll show really, really quickly before we move on. Just for the sake of time, I'll just tell you that it's there. There's also the ability to do mesh links now. So you can go pick an AP. We'll just go grab this one right here. And if you disconnect it from the Ethernet backhaul, then it will establish a mesh connection. So, I'm going to do like a ridiculous scenario here. You would never, ever do this. But here you can see that I've got two APs here. And this one is, basically our upstream AP and our downstream AP. And you can see that, okay, we're looking at neg 76 dBm. We're expecting 432 megabits per second on the PHY side of things. So you can use that to look at what backhaul is going to look like and all that. So, okay, that's probably enough for a quick product update. So with that, we talked about housekeeping. Yeah, comments, banter, note passing, use the chat, questions, put them in the Q&A tool. This is being recorded. We will send it out. And so with that, I think we'll turn it over to Mitch to talk about 1 AP per classroom. So Mitch, what do you got for us? Is 1 AP per classroom, is it legit or is it not legit?
Let me start off by saying that it's probably, so this used to be obviously an argument a lot, a handful of years ago. I can remember, being on Twitter, having discussions with people about it. I'm going to just assume, and we know what that means, but I'm going to assume that probably it's probably more common these days just because of the amount of devices that are in classrooms. Now, with that, I have to say, with just a little bit of backstory, the school district that I work for is a little bit, I want to say it might be just a little bit different.
Oh, no, did we
please? Oh, did somebody say something?
No, I thought we lost you for a second, but I think it was me, not you. So go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it. But yeah, like we have, so just a little bit of backstory. And if I get a little bit long-winded, please speed me up, Joel, please. But we all of our students are issued a Chromebook. So obviously, we're just going to say we'll say 25 kids per classroom. That might be a little aggressive, but we'll say 25. And then you know that the majority of students in middle school and high school probably now are, they all have a phone, at least a phone. So that's, if they've got a Chromebook and the phone, that's at least 2 devices right there. So you got 50 devices right there. So, and this is the way we've done it for several years now. So like there used to be an argument, like you don't need to have, an AP per classroom. And what it all comes down to obviously is if the design calls for it, you don't argue with the design anyways. But for us, it's always been that way. I used to work for a VAR, where based on the design in some of the schools we did, and these were smaller school districts, we would put like an AP every other classroom or however it measured out. But like in our case, and I understand the concerns that were raised back then, and it might have actually been Keith, and I know Keith's there, but that we talked about. I just want to say I think it was Keith that I talked to about it. But obviously you got to keep your customers' costs in mind, and just slapping an AP in every classroom back, a handful of years ago was not necessarily the right thing. I mean, it's the easy thing to do. But it's not necessarily the right thing based on, requirements or even just being cost effective for your customers. But in our case, it always kind of was. And, because at any given time, based on the requirements that I'm given, I have to expect that every single classroom has at least 25 kids in it. Now, obviously, how schools are, that's not necessarily true, but as far as our design goes, I have to expect that every classroom has at least 25 kids in it at every single time. So, or every, all through the day. So that means, I definitely, for the most part, have to put an AP in every classroom.
So it's a capacity thing then, Mitch? Like, does it really come down to capacity that's what it takes?
Yeah. Yeah, for us. And other parts of the building, it gets different, like auditoriums. Obviously, those are different requirements and whatnot. But yeah, it's definitely a capacity thing. So, but yeah, I mean, and like I said, I think it was Keith several years ago that I talked to. If it wasn't Keith, I'm sorry. But I understood where they were coming from when they were talking about, a cost for your customers and going by design. I totally understood that and respected that. But even 5-6 years ago, whenever this discussion was that I'm thinking of, we had a need to put an AP in every classroom. So, it was just something that we did. It was a hot topic. Along with, I mean, some of you remember, like, I was the SCA guy, so maybe I still am. I don't know. We've kind of moved on from that, but that's a different story for a different day. But and sorry guys, there's a fly flying around my head right now. But yeah, I mean, those are hot button topics, handful of years ago. And I'd like to hear what other people say, like, that might be here. I mean, is it more commonplace? Like, is it more common now that designs in the K-12 vertical are seeing that as well? I mean, I realize, we've got approximately 100 schools. We're a pretty big school district, one of the bigger ones in the United States. I know not the biggest, I've been corrected, but it's definitely, we're definitely one of the bigger ones. So I see Jerry's got maybe a question here.
Yeah, Jerry,
I
go
do.
ahead.
So you mentioned like 50 devices or so is kind of what you're looking at per classroom, which then is dictating one AP per classroom in your environment. Is that kind of the, often I get a question around, the number of devices to the AP, right? Of how many devices can the AP handle? I know obviously that's another loaded question. So going from one loaded question to another one, but I'm just kind of curious with the folks that we have on the call with you and Rowell and Bryan, if you guys have like kind of a general rule of thumb even of how many kind of devices you're kind of planning for in that type of setting per AP.
Yes, so that is a super loaded question, and that is one of the most common questions that I get asked. I'm sure most of us here get that question a lot, and obviously it always goes down to the wireless professional's favorite phrase is "it depends." But I wouldn't. We have a very loose guideline that people can see as far as like, this is the AP, this is what it looks like, this is its model number, and this is approximately what you can expect. Now, I'll be honest with you, I hated saying, like, actually slapping a number to that, because obviously it depends. But yeah, we do have something, just kind of establish a loose expectation, so that, you know, people know whether maybe they're having a problem, maybe they aren't, maybe they, you know, just have gone over capacity. And we've got things to remedy that quickly. But for us, that's what we do. We kind of loosely state, you know, a range of access or a range of devices that can be expected in a classroom based on whatever access point is in there.
Question for the chat. If anybody has sort of like a max client count, everybody's environment's different. Everybody's everybody's use case is completely different, but it'd be really interesting to hear what kind of client count people try to stay under on their APs. Maybe throw like environment use case client count, because, you know, those things kind of go together in my mind. It'd be interesting to hear. So Mitch, have you in Hamina, just to kind of, it's definitely a Hamina webinar if I'm like trying to bring it around to Hamina, right? But so one thing that we do in Hamina, you can actually put this in there, is you can define the capacity zone. Have you used this, Mitch? Have you used it by chance? It's okay if you say no. That's totally fine. It's fairly new. Yeah, that's okay.
I can't say honestly that I have yet.
Okay, cool. So this is the design that I'm going to have you guys grade in a little while. So you get a little sneak peek at it here. But basically, what you can do in Hamina is you can draw in a capacity zone, and then you can say like what devices are in there. So, you know, here I've got like 50 MacBooks, and we could say, you know, we'll throw 50 iPhones, like 60 MacBooks and 50 iPhones. And then what we do is we use our roaming algorithm that we use for the client view to determine which APs we think all the clients are going to associate to. Now, obviously, we can't factor in like how they moved into the room or anything like that. They're kind of teleported into place. But that the idea behind that is it's supposed to give you a good idea of how many clients you're going to end up with on a given radio. Like, for example, here you can see this one, we've got 78 clients in the 5 gigahertz band, 9 down there in 2.4. So that's kind of why I'm interested to hear what people try to stick to. Clark Moore says, try to keep it at 50 per classroom. Anders says under 35. Gary says 75 to 100, but it's totally based on capacity requirements. Yeah, absolutely. So
I usually, like, based on the most common one that we have that we're using right now, I would say 50 to 75. And it's just it's a common access point on the market right now. 50 to 75 is where I like to try to keep it. So it sounds like it's very similar. And by the way, I just want to say, and I have not used this specific thing, but I know you and I have talked about it offline, but this is really a game changer, man, to be able to visualize this type of thing. Obviously can't be 100% perfect, but I mean, it's so good to be able to see this type of thing. And especially when you're, you know, needing to explain something to leadership or something like that.
Nice. Super glad to hear that.
I will be so bold as to go ahead and put a number on it as well. And I will prefix this with it depends on what the use case of the classroom is. It also depends on, am I doing dual band, tri-band, single band, 20 meg wide, 40 wide channels? So kind of like my standard design of, you call it a 20-person classroom, and I'm doing 5 gig only, 20 megahertz channels. I'll put about 20 devices per AP. If I'm doing 40 wide channels, I actually did the math. You can actually fit more clients on a 40 wide channel. So I'll go up to about 33 clients per AP for classroom designs.
And Bryan, just to be sure I'm understanding it clearly, it's because since you have the wider channel width, we can hit faster data rates, we can get devices on the air, off the air quicker, and thus cram more on the channel.
Exactly. So that's why in my classrooms, I'm doing 40 where I can, 20 everywhere else.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Fantastic. Any additional thoughts, final thoughts before we move on, Mitch?
No, and you actually asked the question that I was going to pose to Bryan. Was that because of a throughput requirement or something that you have established? But yeah, that makes sense. Generally, for the most part, all of our stuff is 20 megahertz wide, just because of the number of access points and the amount of spectrum that we have available for us to use, obviously, in our school sizes. So, I mean, just generally speaking, from a high level, you know, we stick to 20 megahertz as well. But yeah.
Nice. Cool. Before we move on, UC Kiviniemi, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Joel Crane. Joel Albert Crane, as his full name is. Yeah, Bryan, I was going to ask, like, you said 40s where you can and 20s where you cannot. How do you design where you can, where you cannot?
So it's about density. How many 5 gigahertz channels are available in your region? Here in the US, what is it? 20, there's 24 20 megahertz wide channels available in the US if you include all the DFS and the 2C band there. So if my capacity for a classroom means that I need to have more than call it 20 APs whose coverage would impact that classroom, then I can't be doing 40 wides. I have to do 20. Otherwise, I get way too much CCI.
And so you would essentially make a, let's say, predictive design and then decide, or you would look at your, in your case, the MHz dashboard, which gives like an overlay of the channels if you do it post install.
I try to do it pre-install.
Yeah.
I hate to have to go and retroactively change a channel plan. But I have had to do it in a couple of cases. So
the reason I also ask, and sorry, Joel, for hijacking a little bit of airtime here, is our roadmap. So not to spill the beans, but I'm gonna. We've been working on a automatic like channel width adjuster, and the first version will be flat throughout the site, ideal channel width. So if you start to see too much CCI, it drops the channel width, stuff like that. That will be released pretty soon, and I'm putting words in the mouth of our architects. But yeah, that's coming first. But we also today discussed like what if you're gonna go all Bryan Ward on it and have all dynamic. So that will be version 2 then, especially since it sounds like people are actually doing it. It's a thing.
Yeah, and I should clarify that in the 40 where I can, 20 everywhere else model, that is a site-wide determination.
Site-wide determination.
Yeah,
Perfect.
so it or an entire building.
Excellent.
Or
so
at
we'll
the very least.
picture.
Yeah. So I've there's some talk in the chat. It's clients are very sticky to their 40 and 80 wide APs.
That's right, because they
Yeah.
use data rate as a basis of
Yes.
association. You cannot mix them actually, or you will run into unpredictable roaming. That's a very good point.
Yeah, I tried in some of my dorms 20 wide in the student dorm rooms and 40 wide in the lounge at the end of the hall, thinking, oh, hey, if you're in the lounge, and you got 50 people there watching Netflix, then get a higher data rate. In reality, the students who were in the lounge who then walked back to their dorm room would be sticky to that AP, even to a horrible RSSI.
And same thing with 4-stream APs and 2-stream APs combined in the same environment, obviously.
Yeah, that's been less of an issue for me, at least that I've seen, but the channel width is definitely high in the roaming algorithms of clients.
Yeah, and the 4 versus 2 stream, 4 streams are not always available anyway. I mean, depends on the environment, how much spatial multiplexing you get. Yeah,
and now with all the Apple devices, they're only doing 2 stream in the client devices. So
sure.
Nice.
And if I could just piggyback a little bit off and kind of going back to what I was saying before, another thing, and I even owned up to it that I wasn't I hadn't done a ton of research on 6 gigahertz yet, but I did read up on it recently here. And it seems just, based on the physics of 6 gigahertz and AP per classroom, I mean, obviously the higher the frequency you go, the more it attenuates, or the quicker it attenuates. So it's kind of, even this portion of spectrum that we're given, it's going to probably drive people that already that haven't gone 1 AP per classroom, if they actually have clients that are 6 gigahertz too, to probably have to start planning that way as well. So that's just something to keep in mind, as well, that, obviously the higher the frequency, the more attenuation. So that was one thing that I thought was pretty important to think about. And I'm sorry, I'm still fighting this fly. I'm a ham radio operator too, so like I understand it from both perspectives, as far as frequency and stuff like that. But yeah, that was an interesting consideration that I hadn't thought about. I was like, oh, it's close enough to 5 gigahertz, but obviously it's a higher frequency. But I just wanted to point that out as well.
So, Mitch, there's a question in the Q&A tool. And by the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw those in the Q&A tool, and we'll some of them will wait till the end, some of them will pick up along the way, but feel free to put those in there, like Nick just did. Thank you, Nick. JC Luna asks, what about the AP location in the classroom, given its setup? Are there any special considerations for where you put the AP in the classroom? What's your strategy around that?
So honestly, there really isn't a strategy other than, most classrooms, I guess, probably generally speaking, are roughly the same shape. It's just your classic square cinder block type construction. We'd throw them in the middle. We try to get to as close to the center as possible of every classroom, knowing that there's going to be one in every classroom. We try to put them in the center.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, with that, I think we can probably move on to our next topic, in which Bryan Ward. Hey, Bryan. I don't think you had a chance to introduce yourself earlier. So, by the way, this is an actual photo of Bryan's last speaking engagement. He got a haircut and shaved since then. But as you can see, the room was packed, so people were really, really interested in what he had to say. But yeah, Bryan. Oh, go ahead, Jerry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm a little disappointed he didn't dress up as nice for this webinar. I guess we see where his priorities are.
My red clown wig hasn't arrived in the mail yet. I have nightmares about this photo. Thanks, guys, for making this.
You're very welcome. And we didn't make it.
So,
that was taken. That's a real photo.
It was a real photo. Okay. I joined late. I was having trouble getting on the Zoom. Anyway, I'm Bryan Ward. I work at Dartmouth College here in New Hampshire, United States. Among many, many other jobs, I'm the Wi-Fi guy. So I was invited to speak here. And what I wanted to talk about was less about Wi-Fi and more about how to even get your design started. I saw some stuff in the chat when I joined. It's like, hey, we don't even get floor plans. Well, that's a problem that you need to solve. Every project, be it new construction, renovation, there is a set of architectural drawings that has to be stamped and approved by your local town building inspector. That is a hard requirement. So someone somewhere has the CAD files, they have the drawings, and you just need to find out who that person is who has them, or who it is to ask to then go and ask the architect for them. And there's different types of drawings as well that can be insanely valuable. Like, yeah, you might just get the normal, here's the flat floor plan. It might have some furniture drawn on it. It might have some architect or electrician notes scribbled in the margins. If that's all you can get, fine, work with it. But there are types of drawings, which I will attempt to share here, like this one. This is a combination that shows the cable tray layout throughout the building, as well as a form of what's called the reflected ceiling plan. So all these rectangles here are actually your drop ceiling tiles. So if you're trying to position APs so it fits a drop ceiling grid, here you go. The people who install the drop ceilings don't just show up and say, all right, well, let's start throwing squares on the ceiling and make it work. They actually engineer it and build it to a drawing that's designed for them. Looking at another example, you should also work with your architect and your project manager to get your own telecom drawings. IT is no longer, it comes in after the building's done and the IT guys make it work. That's not a sustainable means of working anymore. So insist that you get your own telecom layer in the CAD files. And that includes everything: wall jacks, ceiling jacks, ceiling jacks for APs and projectors and other audio video equipment. Wi-Fi and networking is a first-class citizen. The architects need to treat it as such. And that's a pretty easy request to make if you ask the right person. Some other types of drawings aren't even drawings. In the CAD file set that has to get approved by the inspector, you can usually get occupancy counts. So in the classroom, we've got 849 square feet of classroom, seats 43 people. Valuable information when you're designing Wi-Fi. They break it up by floor, and they're not doing this to make your life easier. They're doing this because of fire code. They're required to provide to the fire marshal or the local inspector jurisdiction how many people are in this building and how quickly can they get out in the event of an emergency. This information exists for other reasons. You just need to ask for it. Going to another page, another example of a reflected ceiling plan. So again, you can see not only do you get the floor plan and the architectural layout, but again, the drop ceiling, or in the cases where you've got a fancy ceiling finish, like here, you can see what areas are there. You know, I've done a number of buildings where I show up to hang an AP expecting a drop ceiling, and no, it's this fancy woodwork that I'm not allowed to touch. Knowing that in advance means you can adjust your design before you show up. If I go to this page, the architects also have to define how the walls are constructed. A huge part of designing Wi-Fi is knowing what your wall materials are. And while, yeah, you can go out and survey an existing building with, you know, your survey tools, if this is new construction, you don't have that ability. Work with the architect, and they have details of what the walls will be made out of. So here we've got 2 layers of 5/8 drywall, 6 inches of insulation, staggered metal framing, and then more insulation and drywall. And there will be floor plans that show, all right, this wall is type 1, this wall is a type 2, and you just cross-reference the other sheets in the drawing package, and you could come up with a very precise wall pattern for attenuation in the Hamina tool. In addition to that, section views. If I'm designing classrooms, how high above the seats is my AP going to be? When you have a sloped floor like this, you're going to have to adjust your transmit power levels to reach the come on, there it is, the seats on the ground level as opposed to the seats that are here. This is, you know, this is a 20-foot difference in some cases. And then as you're adjusting your transmit power, your coverage pattern is going to spread. So having section views, I do this all the time when I have auditorium bleacher style seating. I'll actually do a design with the section view instead of the floor plan, just to make sure that I'm covering in the other axes as I think I am. One of my favorite problems is HVAC ductwork. Like the drop ceiling guys, the HVAC installers don't just show up and mount sheet metal, although that sometimes feels like it. Architects draw this as well. So you can see, oh, look, there's going to be ductwork here. I'm not going to put an access point there. I see both Mitch and Rowell have raised their hands.
Let's go with Mitch first. I think he raised his earlier. Then we'll go to Rowell next.
I just want to say I 100% agree with what Bryan is throwing down right now, because we definitely get drawings on a fairly regular basis. I was just curious how you handle the as far as like there's constant changes going on when we're doing our construction for whatever reason. So it's hard to. I just want to know what your secret sauce is to keeping up with that, because you know you get the as-builts and you get like the 50s, the 65s or whatever. Sometimes it's just like, all right, I just got to get in there and give my best effort and you know, roll with the punches. You know what I mean? I just want to know if you've got a special way.
I plan to do multiple designs for a project. I want to get into the discussions as early as possible, just to ensure that the Wi-Fi is a first-class citizen. So I'll often get, you know, the 10% design drawing where this is what the architect is thinking might happen. And I'll get a very rough draft floor plan. And then I'll spend a little bit of time saying, okay, well, this is what I think the Wi-Fi locations might be. And then the architect revises and the other trades revise, and then I revise. So being able to duplicate projects and copy and paste and swap out floor plans is the workflow that I use. So as I get revised floor plans from the architect, I say, okay, throw out the old floor plan, copy and paste, put in the new floor plan, and I can see, oh, well, this wall moved 6 feet that way. They've divided this classroom into 4, you know, smaller rooms, and I just adjust throughout the life of the design of the project. So it's not that
You're
you just
lucky,
do
man.
one.
That's all I gotta say.
It has
awesome.
been a hard fought battle.
I guarantee it. I guarantee
but
it.
once you find the right people in your organization to talk to, they're more than willing to help you out.
I definitely have my secret like person I
Yep.
go to for CAD drawings. 100%.
Yes.
Oh, I know exactly what you become friends, like you said, with the architect.
Yes.
But I even if I just need something altered in a drawing or something, she can do it exponentially faster than I can. So I'm
exactly. Yeah.
big time.
You know, the people that are making the drawings, they obviously have AutoCAD and Revit and, you know, the other architect grade tools. You don't need to be an AutoCAD expert in order to say, hey, can you give me a drawing with these layers turned on or turned off? Find
Rowell.
that person. Yeah.
Find the right person. Rowell, do you have something?
Yeah, I totally agree with Bryan here, and I'm also fortunate enough to get really good drawings, but there are times when you don't, right? So there's probably a lot of people here in attendees that don't get this level of detail, and a lot of it does have to do with soft skills. So you're gonna have to get into projects really, really early, so you know who's involved in the project. You're gonna have to talk up and be very nice to the architect and just, you know, be on their side and be like, hey, you know, you've got this beautiful, nice wood slat ceiling. I would hate to mess that up with this ugly access point. So let me help you by, one, we got to deliver Wi-Fi to these students, but also let me help you with not destroying your lovely architected building. And usually when you get on their side, they'll help you more, right? And so then you'll make that contact. But I will say that not all architects are the same. Some really suck at drawing these CAD files. They either don't make separate layers, they'll make everything one layer. And also there's a learning curve with these CAD files. Like you'll become an expert at reading these drawings and understanding what all these markings are, what ACB 001 exactly is, and FCU, and whether or not that's going to mess with your design. And like what Bryan said, just be prepared to make more than one design. Over the course of a project, you will learn that walls will be removed, new walls will be added, things will be scrapped. Just be prepared. Like you'll want to make that rough order of magnitude, right? Like what is it initially going to look like? But you'll want to participate in those meetings, at least listen in, and then in those meetings just say, hey, I'm only here for this. I don't need to hear about all the other, you know, logistics of when these steel beams are coming. But if we can just address Wi-Fi and what could affect my design, just push yourself to the top, and then you can keep going, right? So it's a whole other aspect to Wi-Fi that doesn't really get talked a lot about, is doing a lot of these meetings and interpreting these floor plans.
Jussi?
Yeah, this is a really funny coincidence. So Joel completely planned the webinar with you guys, but the next webinar, literally, it's my turn next time around. Jerry and Joel were last. It was going to be about interpreting floor plans, and we didn't invite like a building architect in and you know all of that. So we'll definitely do next time around. We'll do a deep dive on that. So very timely, guys. Very timely.
Yeah,
And this is really good insight, by the way. Thank you. Like super interesting to hear.
I thought it'd be worth sharing. Yeah, learning how to draw and read floor plans is an entire college degree that you can get. You know, architects go to school for 5 or more years.
Yeah,
and
you'll just
then-
have to pick it up in 3 months.
Yeah.
And it's surprising sometimes when they actually place an access point on a map based on what they think it is. It's surprising that they do go to school for that long sometimes.
I was just going to say, and having worked with architects, I don't think 5 years is enough. But yeah, learning what the symbols mean, there's a lot to it. Some architects use symbols that nobody else uses. Regardless, there's usually a legend sheet that tells you what all the little symbols and shapes and letter combinations mean. And if there isn't one, ask. You know, whoever
Doesn't hurt
gave
to
you the
ask.
drawing can tell. Yeah, they can tell you what the little 5-sided shape means.
If I may, Brian, also to note, like you showed the raised floor plan in the classroom there. If you don't get that kind of floor plan, it doesn't hurt to actually go on site and measure those yourself. Like I've had to do that. I've gotten just a 2D, floor plan. I don't see the raised elevation, neither does it say, just because that's the plans I was given. But I have gone on site and measured at different areas of that room just to get the ceiling height.
Yeah, I mean, I'm showing drawings here from, construction in progress. You probably won't have these for an existing building. You can ask, they might exist, but probably not.
They exist, but then somebody doesn't know where to get it. They don't know who to ask, and then they'll just say, "Can you just use what you have?"
Yeah, or and it's definitely not been kept up to date. So, I think worst case, go into the hallway near the elevator and find like the fire emergency, here's how to get out of the building map, and take a picture of that with your phone and scale it up to the correct size. At least that's going to be representative of what the building is. One other point I wanted to make was there's a lot of interesting things that you can find in floor plans. Like for this building, just looking through, it's like, oh, hey, I'm looking for floor plans and section views. And oh, surprise, there's a wirelessly controlled lighting system. If I'm designing Wi-Fi, I'd love to know about these things before they get installed. I mean, we can all raise our hand. How many times have we seen a motion sensor destroy the upper 5 gigahertz band? If you can find out in advance, okay, they're putting one of those in, I can adjust my channel plan. Or better yet, go back to them and say, listen, this product you picked is going to cause chaos with the Wi-Fi. Can you pick a different product? And a lot of times they can say, yeah, we'll pick something else. So once you start making these interpersonal relations with your architects, the campus planners, the contractors, they're going to start listening to you as well. I was very fortunate on a recent project. The project manager told me, we will change the architecture to match your Wi-Fi design. I was blown away.
Awesome.
So keep working the angle and express. It's like, listen, Wi-Fi is important. You got to plan it.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. I think the next thing we want to talk about real quick is, well, actually not so much the next thing we want to talk about, but the next thing we need to do is, unfortunately, exams are here. We need to do some grading, and since you guys are the professors on this call, then we've got to get UC's design graded here. So UC's going to share his screen, and you guys are gonna check out his design. UC, do you want to walk us through your design really quick? And
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joel. I'll be quick. So of course, like a good Wi-Fi design, it always starts with requirements, right? I hope you can see my screen. So I just list out my requirements. Requirement number 1 is green, and requirement number 2 is cheap. So the map needs to be green. That's my requirement number one, first of all, and secondly, like the budget for this old student house of a couple of floors cannot exceed $300, which sounds pretty realistic and generous to me. So let's take a look at how I actually accomplished this goal. Hold on, where was I? Yeah, not
Is that the school of hard rocks there?
exactly. That's the school of rock, indeed. Yeah. That's Jack Black actually back there with his Wi-Fi IP. Here we go. So this is more like it, different browser window. So what I actually did is I accomplished this by placing 3 home routers here. And if we look at my Wi-Fi coverage, as you can see, this looks great. I've done a channel plan as well. You can see 2.4 channels, 5 GHz channels below the APs. The map seems pretty green to me. And look at this. This is actually secondary coverage even. Like primary coverage looks great as well, as you can see. So task accomplished, mic drop, and should actually drop the laptop because the mic is integrated into the, I don't know. But anyway, what do you guys think? That. Where's my CWNE? That's
looks good. Everything's on the same channel. A+. See you later.
Everything's green, so it's good.
Yeah, exactly. And I even made a fancy 3D version out of it. So just
so very professional too.
Exactly. So one channel. This is in the honor of Mitch's previous life. This is a single channel architecture using a home Wi-Fi 4 router. And if we can't do cabling, you know what I'll actually do? I'll just put a mesh link here as well, so that to add for that reliability a little bit.
Yeah, because you don't want to have to install cables to these. You just want it to work.
Who
right?
would install cables?
Yeah.
And I mean the mesh link seems solid. It seems pretty so. Oh, hold on. The mesh link.
Mesh link.
Yeah.
So futuristic. I like it.
I give it an F. You see an F.
Wow.
F as in Pharaoh grade, because Pharaoh was like the emperor of Egypt, right? The mesh link seems
just in case someone's listening and then they decide to hop out at this moment and go, "Hey, UC said this design's pretty solid." So did all the people on the panel.
Hey, dude,
this is
data rates. I did have 160 megahertz channels on 5G, but doesn't that give me some points? No.
The last 2 minutes have been entire sarcasm. This is horrible. You should never do this.
All right, so let's go round table here really quick. Let's start with Mitch. What are the top 2 things that UC did wrong in this design? Go, Professor Dickey.
Well, as much as it pains me to say it, somebody else get a recording going. It's all on the same channel.
And what's the problem with having it all on the same channel?
Co-channel contention definitely would be a problem here. Yeah. Hold on. I'm leaving some room for other people here if they want to chime in too.
Yeah, so it's not just the co-channel with the 3 APs. It's all of the clients associated to them. They're all speaking on the same channel at the same time. So when you're designing for capacity of a classroom, the channel plan is more about the number of clients than it is the number of APs.
Absolutely.
So
and forgive me if I missed that, but was there a clear requirement that was established for your design, UC?
Yeah,
there was green. It was green and
green and cheap. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
That was the requirement.
I think everybody would agree that the foundation of a good wireless plan is always going to be making sure you have the clear requirements for it. So obviously green and cheap, as much as we all would
those
love
are not
that,
good requirements, to be honest.
They're not realistic. Yeah, it's
not
realistic.
And usually if somebody provides those requirements, I will have to say, garbage in, garbage out. That's what's gonna happen.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
we can see a little bit
and-
of overcapacity in the APs as well, because there is an event space here and all that. So we're getting like 300 clients on a Wi-Fi 4 AP radio.
So definitely capacity is not quite there. But if you were to get a requirements of cheap and green, that doesn't necessarily answer the requirement for what needs to happen in these rooms. So if cheap and green means nobody can do anything, you can't do your tests over a Wi-Fi network, or you can't do, you can't tell these students to go to a simple Google Workspace page, then you have not met the requirement. So as a Wi-Fi engineer, you need to actually ask more questions and say, well, what do you want Wi-Fi to do for these people in these rooms? How many devices are we talking about? What applications are they going to use? And that's what you're going to feed your design into, so that way you can tell them, hey, to actually meet your actual requirements, I cannot do it cheap. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, find out what applications are in use in your environment. You might have to go and ask the faculty, ask the learning design team if your school has that. If they're saying, yeah, we need everybody to be on Zoom simultaneously, as ridiculous as that sounds, that's a reality. I've seen auditoriums where every single student is on the same Zoom call. And find out what the requirements for the application are. Zoom's requirements are very well documented. If you're doing live proctored testing, like a Pearson exam, find out what their requirements are.
Exactly.
I would, and you use your tools, use all the tools at your disposal, because sometimes even if you go and tell them cheap and green isn't going to work, they're going to be like, I mean, come on, we all know, we've been down that road where they expect one thing and you're like, it's not going to work that way based on this, and then you have to prove it. So use all the tools that are at your disposal, and be like, and especially like this product right here. I mean, you can be like, look, you can look right here, the amount of clients that are on this access point right now is not sustainable. This is not going to work. And showing them will oftentimes get you better expectations.
Absolutely. And actually, I'm demoing here also one of the upcoming features, which is the more detailed CCI view, where you can actually see which APs are interfering where and stuff like that.
That's very cool.
Still work in progress, but yeah, absolutely. Should we move to grading somebody else's work?
I don't think we have time. It's 10. It's only 7 minutes still, so I don't think there's time by the time we get through questions.
Can I add a comment about your design there, Jussi? Because I did use Hamina to help change an architect's mind when they were talking about why I was brought in very last minute on a project, didn't know that a room was being renovated. And so my initial design had APs mounted on the ceiling, and they were telling me they had a very special ceiling that they didn't want anything mounted on. So they said, hey, can we mount the APs on the wall instead? And, instead of your 6 APs, can we just do 2? And so I used Hamina. I put the 2 APs on the wall and then used the client view to show why it wouldn't work, and what happens when a student walks into the room and goes to the other side of the room, and how that one AP just doesn't provide the correct coverage pattern that we're looking for, because I was going for directional antennas in the classroom. And so I ended up was able to change their mind with the client view and have them put the antenna on their nice ceiling.
Nice.
And I'm sure they hate me for that, but
hey, but that's the thing though. They have to figure it out. What do you want? Do you want to meet your requirement of providing whatever type of Wi-Fi, or do you want it to look pretty? Sometimes you gotta weigh that. And like you said, man, you use your tool to show exactly what was going to happen. And I use all the tools at your disposal, because ultimately what's going to happen if it doesn't work? They're going to come to you.
And keep in mind the architect. Yeah, the architect is not the one who gets to make the final decision. That's usually the project manager, and the project manager is representing your organization. I like to frequently remind them that when construction's done, the architect gets to go home. We have to stay here and support this network.
Very true. And professional as I am, I did have the APs like you know Rowell's ceiling wall mount. I had them on table mount, like where every good home AP should be. But yeah, Joel, maybe you actually had some actual substance as well for this webinar, not just my design, which
You know,
to be pretty terrible.
yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're going to have time. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time for the professors to grade my design or Jerry's design, which is a tragedy.
So you're getting a get out of jail free card, huh?
I mean, I can't help that it took that long to go over yours and that mine won't have to be graded. That's not my problem or my fault. But what I did do is I did put a link to it in the chat. So if anybody wants to go and check out my design in the chat, then they can go do that and you can give me a grade. But real quick, Mitch is Bryan circled something. So in 15 seconds, Bryan, what did you circle? What's the problem here?
I'm seeing some large spaces. This performing arts auditorium probably seats 100 or 200 people, and I see one access point. Now,
yeah, 314 people, but I mean, APs are like switches, so it's fine, right? Oh, we lost Bryan's audio.
Oh, sorry, I hit mute. It depends. What is this AP doing? I have designed Wi-Fi for entertainment venues like this where I'm not providing Wi-Fi for the audience. This one AP, if it's there to support the audio guy, then one AP is fine. You don't need to get the rest, the whole audience on this. Yeah, requirement met.
All right. So in the interest of being speedy, Mitch, what's the number one problem with this design?
I'm so like for some reason it's looking a little grainy on my laptop. So forgive me if it looks like I'm getting ready to step inside my camera here. But let's see.
You can double click, Mitch, on it to maximize it on your screen. It still looks a little bit grainy.
By the way, the architect told me where to put the APs here. They drew X's on the map and I just put them there.
I mean, that's a common struggle for me. I'm not gonna like we don't have enough time to get into that, but that is literally a common struggle with me. It happens a lot and we have to go back, but I'm sorry. I just messed up. You might want to move on because it's not looking good on my screen right now. I just made it look worse. I'm sorry.
Rowell, anything that you would notice here?
You do have like I always go back to that high density area. It's just not enough APs. I will say I've had put a lot of clients on one AP. I've had it work with like 300 clients at one point on one AP. And it usually comes down to the professor telling the students to not use Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, anything that's not class related. And then all of a sudden the Wi-Fi works because it is hard to design. It is hard to plan or design, say like you've got a 300 capacity room and you're saying, okay, the most critical applications are like this website or this audio thing, but you have to accommodate people who are not actually paying attention in class and are just goofing off. I've sat in a class and I've counted people who are just watching YouTube, watching last night's football game. And you just have to take that into consideration because I've done it before where I just design for what is required and it just fails because I now have an issue with other applications that are eating up airtime.
And I'll add on to that too. I agree because I've had to. It's almost one of those things: meet requirements, but then also trust your gut and how you know it's going to be used as an engineer. I definitely use that.
So in these 5 classrooms, I budgeted 100. So I added some APs here to bring the client count down a little bit. I budgeted 30 laptops per classroom. Are you saying we should add like some phones or something like that in there? Like are people going to be using their phones on it?
Yeah.
So if we add like 150 phones, now we're looking at we're pushing 60 on this AP, 50 on this AP, 50 on really actually we're basically like 50, almost 50 per AP. That's obviously how the math works out. But
don't forget the iPads that are on the outside of the room that say when the next meeting is. Don't forget the thermostats that are on Wi-Fi. Don't forget, everything else that's on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And
People roaming down the hallways near that classroom, all those things. Yeah.
And plan for future growth. When you're putting AP locations in a building, those locations have to last for 10 to 15 years. So if that means you have to predict, okay, well, what is my use going to be 5 years from now? Say, all right, well, I'm modeling 50 MacBooks right now. Maybe I should model 75, just to say, all right, the bandwidth requirements will be higher in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I will say, when you're planning for growth, sometimes there is a physics limitation to how many access points you're going to be able to put into a room. If they're going to fit, if they decide at one point, that high density area of 300 people, now they're going to eventually, condense the seats and now double that, but you can only physically place, I don't know, 8 access points. You're just not going to be able to get everyone on, the specified access point you think it's going to cover. There will be a physics limitation at some point, and then that's when you have to have a more larger discussion. And I'm about to have one with a client where I'm going to tell them, like, hey, can we just tell people to not use Instagram? Because I did the metrics and saw they weren't supposed to be using it, but out of like 1,000 clients, around 200 were using Instagram, and it was just the most used application of all the traffic in that room. And I was told that they weren't supposed to. And that's why I designed it to what they were supposed to be using, only to find out they're not using it.
Jussi, you had something?
Yeah, real quickly, if you don't mind, I fixed my design. So
oh yeah, go ahead. And I think Rowell had to jump. So Rowell, if you need to jump, feel free. Thanks for being here. Much appreciated. Everybody that's still hanging out, we'll check out Jussi's design. We'll cover Q&A. We'll wrap this up if you need to go. No problem. But we'll be sure to get to the questions here in a second. So yeah, go ahead, Jussi.
Yeah, I put one private cellular AP because 5G is better than Wi-Fi. I just put in one private cellular AP. It covers the whole thing, and there's 482 clients associated to that 20 megahertz bad boy. So just saying, mic drop.
Nice. All right. Well, yeah, let's cover Q&A really quick, and then we'll wrap this up. So first question, hey Jussi, maybe you can demo this one if you don't mind. Nick asked, can Hamina use APIs to pull data from Wi-Fi products to view a real-time view of the environment so that it can be compared to what the predicted plan was during the planning process? Yeah, I butchered the question, but I think it came across okay.
That's actually a really, really good question. And can it though? Yes, it can, and pretty easily too. So let's look at. Let me see. I just pulled in actually one of our customers' networks here. So this happens with a click of a button. So you say import. This guy was a Juniper Mist network, works for Meraki and Aruba, many others too. But I just essentially hit import and clicked import, and it brings in the existing running network, the current AP locations, the actual APs, their running configuration, their channel numbers, their channel widths, transmit powers, everything. And here we can see the actual MAC addresses, serial numbers. This is the situation live on this site. This is not how it was planned. This is how the network is running live, and all the bells and whistles of Hamina, like the accurate, RF analysis, 3D, roaming man, all of that can be used. So it's not just a design tool, it's also an RF analysis tool. And this is like, we don't advertise this actually a lot, but I think next year people will start to like realize that, oh, it's not just a planning tool. It actually provides quite a kick-ass map view also to analyze. Like I can see immediately what's my coverage on 2, 4, 5, secondary CCI right here, right now on this site.
Nice. Thank you, Jussi. All right, next question from Charles Clare. Hey, Charles, good to see you. What are people doing in student accommodation that is built as modules? Are you doing dorm or hotel rooms with wall jack APs? Also, how do you give students a private Wi-Fi network per room? How are you handling Xboxes, smart TVs, AirPlay? How are you handling all that in student accommodation? Bryan, you got anything on that one?
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of the wall plate style APs. In existing buildings where you have a wall jack, it's a perfect fit. For new construction and full renovations, I'm actually putting ceiling mount APs in the student rooms. And if I'm not putting an AP in every room, I'm at least putting a junction box and a jack. So that way in the future, when 60 gigahertz Wi-Fi is a thing, I can put a radio on the ceiling of every room. Getting the AP up high means that the student can't put a TV or a refrigerator in front of the access point, and it eliminates those sources of line of sight interference. As far as providing wired jacks, yep. In higher ed, in the dorm rooms, we get a lot of people hooking up Xboxes, PlayStations, Nintendos, and they still want the wired jack. So we can't go Wi-Fi only, as some analysts might say is the future. We're not there yet. I don't know if we ever will be. So we definitely have a requirement to provide wired jacks, just like that missed AP12 right there. I've got one over here too. It's a great way to take, hey, I've got one jack on the wall. How can I provide Wi-Fi and wired service to the student?
Back in Idaho, I stuck a wall plate AP. I used a Ubiquity in that case, but I stuck a wall plate AP on the end of my kitchen counter, like my island in my kitchen, and I loved it because it was great for like quick lab work and things like that. And pretty much every vendor out there offers these. This is a missed AP12. UC is frantically hunting around trying to find one of our other wall mount APs, but Aruba makes them, Ruckus makes them, everybody makes these things. But yeah, I love having an integrated Ethernet port. I love the PoE pass through. These are super, super handy. And this is my favorite kind of AP. No luck, UC. Haven't found any. He's still hunting around. So they're here somewhere. But
yeah, the Cisco 702 is the old one, the 1810. I'm sure there's a new Catalyst branded Cisco one with the Aruba 303H or the 503H.
Yep.
They're all very similar.
Nope. Oh my gosh. Trying to kill me. This is a micro tick. This isn't the wall mount AP, but
that's like a wall mount.
Yeah, you can wall mount it.
Wall mount it.
You can any mount it.
Oh my gosh. All right.
For the sake of vendor neutrality.
Just for the sake of vendor neutrality. Yes, trying to be vendor neutral. But anyway, thank you for that excitement, UC. That was great. It's okay. Okay, couple more questions before we wrap it up. Nick says, can Hamina take CAD files with elevation and section views and create a 3D model? Nick, we can't create elevation and section view, or we can't use elevation and section views to create the 3D model. We can take a CAD file and you can define wall types, and we'll draw those in, and then you can extrude them in 3D. You can define different heights for those walls. So there is some flexibility there. Get in touch with us if you want to see it in action. We'd be happy to show it to you. But yeah, nothing super fancy with the elevation and section views. But the wall drawing, we just did an update for the wall drawing. It's really, really good now. Like I'm really excited about it. Go give it a try. It's pretty great. I think last question before we wrap it up is Josh Tackett says, does the ability to show live data in Hamina mean it could be a replacement for built-in vendor dashboards like Aruba Airwave? UC, go ahead on that one.
I don't think it's a replacement. I think it's like something extra. It's kind of like we see ourselves as a very like complementary, like what vendors don't do, we can. So remember back in the day when there's every now and then people use also vendors RF planning tools, for example. We just provide like an extra layer of granularity for those planning tools and an extra feature set and reporting and stuff like that. That's the same way I see the map view. It's like vendor gives you that basic typically like circles on a map type of a view. of the running network. And we just provide, more in-depth RF analysis, troubleshooting, CCI, capacity, all of that. So that's how I see it. We kind of complement. If you so desire, you can get a more feature-rich map-based analysis solution. But that's a good question. Definitely not a replacement. We don't want to replace the vendors in any way. We just want to complement their offering. Hashtag political answer, but truthful, very honest as well. Is that even possible? Political answer and honest at the same. Oh yeah, I don't know. Let's not even go.
Who knows? Who knows? We tried. All right. I think with that, it is time to go.
There's one question around getting a trial. I figured, I don't think we've talked about it on the webinar at all, the new free evaluation mode of Hamina. You want to just touch on that real quick?
Oh, yeah, I could take that really quick. So if you go to hamina.com and click on, there's a button in the upper right-hand corner. I forget exactly what it's labeled, but just go click on the button. Yeah, get started. Go up there, click on that, make an account, sign in. There are 5 sample projects included, so you can kind of like mess around with an existing project and see what a larger project with a bunch of APs looks like. So you can go try that. You can also do your own designs. You're just limited to 3 APs and a certain amount of wall types. But yeah, go check it out, try it out, and see what you think. And if you have any questions, need to get in touch with us for any reason, here's our email addresses. Jerry at Hamina, Joel, and Jussi at Hamina.com. We are more than happy to help. And thank you so much, Bryan. Thank you, Mitch, for being here. Thanks to Rowell as well. I know he's not here anymore, but thank you guys so much for this. This was really great. Really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, thank you.